I'm delighted to introduce amazing philatelist Birthe King from United Kingdom, who is the co-chair of the present FIP Open Philately Working Group. Birthe King was born and brought up in Denmark and moved to London in 1971 on her marriage, Birthe, and living in London. She is fluent in Danish and English, can read German and some French. She has a degree in history and education from Polytechnic of North London, now University of North London. Both Bertha and Trees have a lifelong interest in history, local, national, and international, as well as family history. Bertha got interested in philately by helping to read and translate Danish and German postal history material for Chris for various collections and exhibits, and realized that with her history background, she could also be a philatelist and chose as her topic the occupation of Denmark during World War II. Open philately, then called open class, was a new way of collecting, and the combination of using both philatelic and non-philatelic appealed to her, and she first showed Denmark, Conscience, Conflict, and Camps 1932-1949 at Nordia in 2002. This exhibit was gradually expanded to 8 frames and has been awarded 2 large gold medals. The section on refugees camp has been developed into an 8 frame exhibit. Refugee camp in Denmark, 1945-1949, achieving a large amount of medals. Her latest exhibit, the reunification of North Schleswig with Denmark, 1864-1920, has received 2 large gold medals. She is a qualified national judge in Scandinavia, accredited in UK, and in open philately at SEA. Birthe was secretary to the FIP working group set up to establish open philately at FIP exhibition, agreed at Jakarta 2012, and is the co-chair of the present FIP Open Philately Working Group. So I request ma'am to start the presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this Open Philately seminar. I also want to thank the Philatelic Congress of India for inviting me to talk about Open Philately, which is really my thing and my part in philately. It's the Open Philately. This is the agenda for this seminar. I'll do a little bit about the guidelines, and then I'll go into the 4 sections on which evaluation and judging is based. The guidelines for competitive exhibitions are the guidelines have been drafted with regard to open philately to help the jury to judge the individual exhibits and to help exhibitors to develop their exhibits. To me, it's kind of the 2 sides of the same coin, and they're equally important to the jury and to the exhibitors. The rules are few, guidelines as we prefer to call them. So open philately seeks to broaden the range of exhibiting and to allow philatelists to include objects from other collecting fields in support of and in order to develop an understanding of the philatelic material shown. It provides an opportunity to present the range of research undertaken by showing the philatelic material in its cultural, social, industrial, commercial, and other contexts, and to show wider and deeper knowledge of the topic. And it allows an extended range of material to open philately that has a further objective of bringing new collectors to the skill and enjoyment of exhibiting and demonstrating its attractiveness as a hobby. Rules for few and far between. The philatelic material must be at least 50% of the exhibit because it's a philatelic exhibit. However, the non-philatelic material may be up to 50% of the exhibit, but it's not a requirement that the non-philatelic material comprises half the subject. However, the variety of the non-philatelic material is important, and it will influence the evaluation of knowledge and research. So, open philately exhibits show the dual aspect of philatelic and non-philatelic material, and the exhibit must develop the chosen subject in an imaginative and creative manner. So, open philately exhibits may include all types of philatelic material included in all other exhibiting categories. The non-philatelic material may include all types of exhibits, excluding dangerous and prohibited material, obviously. Non-philatelic items must be relevant to the chosen subject and serve to illustrate it. The philatelic items must be described in the proper philatelic terms, as they would have been in, for instance, traditional philately, postal history, thematic philately, or any other exhibit. The non-philatelic items must be described and be relevant and assist the development of the exhibit. Exhibits may be planned chronologically, geographically, or any other way that the exhibitor may feel appropriate to employ. The criteria for evaluating and judging exhibits. So the importance of understanding an open philately exhibit can mean that the necessary text will be included to provide background information for the chosen subject. However, all text must be concise and clear. The non-philatelic material must improve the understanding of the open philately subject and the attractiveness of the exhibit. This is the judging, how you give the points, and you will see that it is 30, 35, 30, and 5 points, making the 100, as almost all the other exhibiting classes. However, thematic philately is slightly different. Where can you find the guidelines? That's the really easy piece. On the FIP website, it's there. You click on regulations and guidelines, and you click on open philately, and there you will get the present guidelines. And anybody who would like to try to look at exhibiting or collecting and making a display of open philately, please go to the guidelines. There are only 4 pages of them, and I hope it will really help anybody who would like to try. There are some questions that come up in almost all the seminars that are given on open philately, such as, how do I measure the philatelic material in relation to the non-philatelic material? Right. Do not try to work out the percentage of the items or how much they cover on the page. Do not count the number of different items. Look at the page, look at the frame, and take a step back and look at the whole exhibit. Then you will find out that it is mostly quite easy to see if there is a balance of the philatelic and the non-philatelic material. And are postcards philatelic or non-philatelic? Easy. If the picture side of the postcard is shown, the item is non-philatelic. If the address side is shown, the item is philatelic. Most postcards in an open philately exhibit are non-philatelic, as the address side usually is of no importance to the story. And finally, how important is the variety of the non-philatelic material? I've already said that the non-philatelic material may be up to 50%. Therefore, it's important to use as many different and relevant kinds of non-philatelic material as possible. Similar items, of course, will not get top points. You can go into writing a synopsis, but this is not really what this seminar is about. Some organizing committees demand a synopsis, others don't. It is not at the moment an FIP demand. You can find information about synopsis on various websites if you want to learn more about that. Title, plan, and treatment are several items. The title defines the scope of the exhibit. The plan defines the structure of the exhibit and covers all major aspects relevant to the title. Treatment or development means to elaborate the scope in depth, aiming to achieve an arrangement of material fully compliant with the plan. The points for title and plan are 10 points. For treatment or development, it's 20. So it's altogether 30 points for title and plan and treatment. It's important to have a good title that tells what the subject is about. It's innovative and eye-catching. You can use an indication, for instance, periods of years, if that's appropriate, often in historical subjects. Use a subtitle if necessary. And here are some examples from the 4 exhibits where I will show examples a little bit later on. And you can see they are quite comprehensive. Some have got years, some have got subtitles, and they explain where they are and so on. The introductory or title page is very important because that's what the judges get in advance of going out on the floor and do the judging. So it must show the aim, purpose of the exhibit, the relevant general information on the subject being developed in the exhibit, a plan explaining the development or structure of the exhibit. The plan should not include an extensive text, but a logical division of the topic into sections. An indication of how items of rarity or special interest are highlighted in the exhibit. An indication of personal research if appropriate. And a brief bibliography. Here's an example of a title page from the exhibit called Coaching Ways and Coaching Days in Great Britain and Ireland. So you have got the place where it's happening, Great Britain and Ireland. It's got a purpose in the first paragraph. It's got some of the background in the second. It's got a piece about personal research. It's got an amusing, eye-catching illustration. And it's got a plan, and you can see the whole exhibit is divided up in main chapters and subsections. There's a bibliography, and at the bottom, interesting and significant items are highlighted thus. It's really important to indicate what is rare or significant, because that's the way you're helping the judges. Here is another title page, and you can see this one has got a heading, Your Cup of Tea, and a subheading, so you know exactly what the exhibit is going to be about. And you have got that aim at the top. This exhibit is a story of tea. Then there's a little bit of background, personal research, an illustration, again, eye-catching, some literary sources, and a slightly different plan. It's got sections and subsections, but the history actually goes from one line to the next. So you get a storyline that goes all through the exhibit from the first section down to the end of the 5th. A little bit more about the plan. The exhibit should tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. The headings in the plan should be the same as the headings on the individual pages. The plan should not be a list of content, but rather a brief paragraph providing keywords or terms for the chapter or section or frame. Adding page numbers might sometimes be helpful, particularly if you are not the person who are mounting your exhibits. Here's another introductory page. It's from Denmark, Conscience, Conflict and Camps. And here you have got the years, so the judges or the viewers know exactly where they are. It's got an aim and structure, a little bit about the choice of material. Sometimes there can be controversial material, which is why it's particularly put in here. And then there is an indication of items of particular interest or rarity. And the item shown here has got Danish stamps. It's sent from the Faroe Islands and is sent to the Danish minister or ambassador Kaufmann in Washington. So it's a nice international item to have on the front page. And then you've got the plan, which is constructed by frame and by pages and into the three main sections: conscience, conflict, and camps. And then there is a bibliography. Development or treatment is very important and increasingly in all exhibits today, it is something that judges really, really look at. It's the relationship between the title of the exhibit, the scope of the story, and the structure of the exhibit, but it's also the choice of the material. The exhibit may be developed chronologically, geographically, or in any other way that the exhibitor may feel appropriate for the subject chosen, and should have a clear storyline, relevant general information, and the subject being developed in the exhibit. So, do the headings and subheadings in the plan correspond with the headings and subheadings on the individual pages? This helps to follow the storyline. Is the item relevant to the story, and does it bring the story forward? Concise and clear text to the individual items should provide appropriate information for the subject treated, not too much, but enough to describe the item, and could have, if appropriate, a little extra of interest, for instance, an extract from a letter. All items must have a text. Here's an example of development. You see the subheading is political extremism in the 1930s. And in the top left corner, there's a postcard from 1937 produced by the Women's Disarmament Committee in Geneva. And that is really self-explanatory and topical all over the world today. There are some labels, and then there is a letter from the Danish section of War Resisters International with two labels on the same topic. Don't give children war toys. The bottom is a letter from 1937 from the Spanish Civil War, sent to a Danish volunteer in the Tailman Battalion. And it is redirected because he was sent to a recreation place in Spain. The Tailman Battalion was named after the German communist politician Tailman, and that leads to the commemorative minishete. Tailman was killed in Buchenwald in August 1944. This is a page from the exhibit A Ménage à Trois, and you can see here you have got a headline and you have got a few lines to the right that tells exactly what's going to be shown on this page. In order to understand some of the items here and from this exhibit, It's important to tell you that the Danish King Christian VII, he was from 1749 to 1808, married an English princess, Caroline Mathilde, who was a sister to King George III of Britain. And the third part in this ménage à trois is the German Dr. Struensee. He was a physician to Christian VII, who suffered from mental illness all through his life. On this page, you see a balanced philatelic and non-philatelic material. And there is a very imaginative, decorative cover on the top right, because this ménage à trois ended with a trial where Struensee was executed and the queen was expelled from Denmark. She was not executed because the importance to her brother, King George III, saved her, and that connection to Britain is shown through the multiple of the Barbados stamps at the bottom. Here we have an example from the history of tea exhibit. And you can see here that the storyline continues if you look at the top left-hand corner. And on the left, you see what is exactly being shown on this page. There is both philatelic and non-philatelic text to all the examples. The illustration in the top left corner is for French chocolate, and it's printed by the John Player and Company of Players Cigarettes. And the in the middle to the mostly right is the first caricature of a Mulready letter sheet, making fun of the original Mulready sheets. Another piece about development. This is from the coaching exhibit, and this goes into details and is explained at the top about shoeing and tail docking. And all the examples on the page illustrate and explains what is said in the top paragraph. Knowledge and research. So what's the difference? Knowledge is documented through the choice of material and the use of brief but sufficient text. Research should be interpreted in a wider sense and generally show the exhibitor's thorough knowledge of the subject and the material. Philatelic knowledge and research is 20 points. Non-philatelic knowledge and research is 15 points, making 35 points. Very important, 35 points. So, philatelic and non-philatelic material. Knowledge is shown in the choice of both kinds of material and analysis of the materials through personal studies. It's a collective knowledge gained from books, articles, websites, manuals, and information shared with other philatelists. So here's an example of philatelic knowledge from the history of tea. If you look at the bottom, you can see a development with examples from the stamp, where the first sheet shows the perforation shift. Then there's 4 block with black colors, and at the bottom you can just about see the reflex printing on the gum sides. I should also mention the Mulready, which is the real Mulready letter sheet. And a bit more on philatelic knowledge. Sorry, it was not the one I was going. There it is. It's about return mail. And starting from the top left, it's a letter from Denmark to the UK, sent on the 9th of April 1940, the day that Denmark was occupied. Moving to the right, it's from Denmark to the USSR, sent on the 19th of June 41. And the Nazis, despite having a non-aggression treaty with the USSR, crossed the border on the 22nd of June. So that letter got stuck and returned. On the bottom left is a letter to the USA sent on the 3rd of December 1941. And that got returned because while it was on its way, Pearl Harbor was attacked on the 7th of December. And finally, there's a letter sent from Denmark to the Faroe Islands on the 14th of April 1940. Britain had occupied the Faroe Islands on the 13th of April 1940 to have a boat hole in the North Atlantic for the traffic, commercial, and U-boat, and so on. And this letter was condemned and then released and eventually returned, arriving on the 22nd of February 1946. So, non-philatelic knowledge. The story of tea gives a good illustration of that. And the storyline, of course, continues, as you have seen from the previous pages from this exhibit. On the top left corner is a tobacco trading card from 1935, also from John Player and Company. And it shows a Portuguese princess. She was married to King Charles II of Britain, and she was the one who introduced tea to the British aristocracy. The card to the top right is another tobacco trading card from 1934 from John Churchman's Cigarettes, showing the handling of tea in transit. And an example from the coaching exhibit about stabling and changing horses. And this is what is really shown on all the examples here. The changing of horses when you arrived at an inn was really important, that it should happen quickly. So there should be staff and stabling facilities, and there should be a quick changeover. It was really important because even then time was money. The large illustration shows the London mail coach 1843 from Louth to London. I will talk more about this item in a later section. So we are into research. Philatelic research, however, is new knowledge or knowledge presented from a new angle, not previously published. It's recommended that the exhibitor might write articles in philatelic magazines and journals, or
बिना वो आयो तो ना बी टाइम जब वो बैठे तो इंश्योरेंस आलो
what you say? Nothing, you carry on. So here's an example about philatelic research, and I will talk about the item in the bottom right-hand corner. This letter was posted on a Wednesday, the 19th of April, 1859, from a small island off the west coast of Ireland. It went to Westport on the mainland. The letter left Westport post office at 4:30 in the afternoon in the Dublin mail bag, and it went by mail coach to Athenry railway station. From there, it travelled by mail train to Dublin, arriving on Thursday, that's the following day, the 20th of April, at 11:45. Very, very fast across Ireland, particularly when you look at the original print above of a Royal Mail day car from 1850, which is showing the difficulties of transport with those kind of carriages across Ireland or anywhere else. Just think about what the weather would be like. And then there's one about the history, from the history of tea again. And this sheet shows a vast variety of material. So we go to non-philatelic research. And here we have got explanation for what is actually shown on this page. And to the top right, a letter actually illustrating that Dr. Struense, who was both German and French educated, had very good ideas about the Enlightenment, and he wanted to introduce that into Danish law. And this cover is here because it's got stamps with Benjamin Franklin, who was the father of the American Enlightenment. And when you look at the sheet to the bottom left, you can see the American Revolution actually bringing enlightenment into the US Constitution on the 4th of July, 1776. Here is examples of non-philatelic knowledge. It's quite a dirty flyer over here, but it is produced by a Danish resistance group to celebrate the birth of Princess Benedicte to the Crown Prince Frederik IX, later King Frederik IX, because the usual cannon salute was not allowed by the occupying forces. The 4 other items are all about a Danish vicar and poet called Kai Munk. He preached and wrote against the Nazi occupation. And in the morning on the 4th of January 1944, he was picked up at his vicarage by a Danish Gestapo group who carried out reprisal murders for the Nazis. And they took him away and murdered him, 3 shots in the back and the head, and dumped his body in a ditch. On the cover is a poem which is repeated on the label sheet. It's a charity labels, and that is, of course, written by Kai Munk. I will go on to material and condition and rarity. All philatelic material must be original, goes without saying. All non-philatelic material should be original where at all possible. Use a variety of non-philatelic material, which I have already mentioned. And of course, all the materials should be in the best available condition. Reasons should be given why philatelic and non-philatelic items are rare and or significant. Reproduction should be at least 25% in size from the original. And again, give an indication of rarity of all material. Conditions 10 points, rarity is 20, giving a total of 30 points for condition and rarity. The quality of philatelic material in open philately can be compared with similar material in other classes. If the quality is not fine, explain why. For instance, a soldier's letter that has been in a pocket in a trench. Similarly, with the quality of the non-philatelic material. And here is a brilliant example of condition. The top right corner is a Valentine's love letter from the 14th of February, 1852. It's beautiful and it's a very fine quality. And of course, it symbolizes the love affair between Struensee and the Queen. The original engraved portrait of Struensee to the top left, and his signature is at the bottom. I should mention that the Valentine's letter is actually cancelled in a place called Salubria. This means healthy in Latin, and of course is a reference to Struensee being a doctor. There is another example in the same exhibit, and the story for all the items here is that King Christian VII, Dr. Struensee, and some noblemen accompanied them to a visit to England, and they visited Oxford University. The postcard shows the robe that was used at the time. The university honored Struensee with an honorary degree of Doctor of Medicine, whereas the king and 9 members of the delegation were given honorary doctorates in civil law. The bottom original engraving is of Kew Palace in London, which they visited. And the engraving, the medal there is made in Britain in memory of the Danish king's visit to the UK. So it was obviously considered a very important visit. Just got to find it. This it's a history of tea again, and it shows again a trade card. It's printed in color in lithography in Paris, and again there's the caricature of the Mulready. We go on to rarity now. Rarity can be very difficult to assess in open philately, although some registers may be used for instance, postal history items. Therefore, it's vital that the exhibitor explains why an item is rare or significant and how it is indicated on the pages. This should be included on the title page, as I've already mentioned. And you could use various symbols. You could use a thicker frame, or perhaps in a brighter color. And here is an example of this rarity. And all the items on this sheet really are rare. The original decree from the 27th of December 1770, announcing the dismissal of the State Council, and in fact that made Struensee a ruler of Denmark because the king was mentally unfit to rule. Needless to say, the nobility, the aristocracy did not like this, and that's why they tried to find reasons for the trial for Struensee and the Queen later on. Top right-hand corner is a Pony Express letter, and although there's quite a few Pony Express letters known, this one is in a particularly good quality. And the pony there is a reference to the Struensee and the Queen going out for rides together. They often did that in the early morning, and this is illustrated by the cancel with Aurora, who of course is the goddess of dawn. And again, there is a Valentine's letter from 1847, again symbolizing the love affair. This is an example of artwork for stamps. And this is from the designer Charles Rycroft, and it is the beginning, and it goes on to, sorry, go back. It goes back, and sorry, and you can see the colors are laid on gradually. And here's another example of rarity, again, an example of original artwork. Denmark issued stamps on the 4th of May 1947 in commemoration of the liberation, and they had a competition, and there are examples of that. And the one where you see the artwork was actually chosen to illustrate the railway sabotage, which you can see in the 3 chosen stamps at the top right, with the green, the red, and the blue. At the bottom is an original photograph of a railway sabotage, and that actually comes out of my parents' photo album. We have arrived at presentation. Of course, the exhibit should be appealing and well balanced by sheet, by frame, and overall. Presentation might only be 5 points, but it can color the impression of the whole exhibit. And neither the philatelic nor the non-philatelic material must be more than 5 millimeters in thickness. Otherwise, it might not be able to fit in the frames. So it's just a 5 point, but remember, it colors everything else. So a few pieces of advice on presentation. Choose the most appropriate size paper for the material. For instance, A3, or you could use 3 sheets across. And you've seen that as an example in 2 of the exhibits I have been using for illustrations here. Use a light color paper, for instance, cream, not colored or bleached white paper. Choose an easily readable typography. For instance, Lucida Sans, Gill Sans, or Arial, or even Times New Roman, and never less than 12 points. Do not use several different typefaces. Emphasize with bold or italics or a different color. Layout can be a great challenge in open philately, but it also provides room for imagination and innovation, because items in open philately, particularly the non-philatelic items, are not traditional sizes. So the layout of the combination is really important. And just a couple of examples here of good layouts. This is from coaching again, and that is an example for an exhibit where you have got 3 pages across, and you have got explanation at the top, and you've got a lovely illustration of an Eilwagen, which of course is an express coach, and it was specifically built for speed and was for the fastest mail and passengers. And this particularly one went from Switzerland to Germany. Here is another interesting layout, because you look at all the items, they have got frames, and they are positioned so that all the items almost make a frame of their own around the material. The last item shows the Danish 1849 constitution, which actually is the one that brings the enlightenment that Struensee had so wanted to introduce into the modern Danish constitution. Christian VII's son, Frederik VI, was very influenced by Struensee, and he worked on the Enlightenment, and so did his descendants, so that it eventually arrived in 1849. Finally, the last example of presentation, it's from a different exhibit. It's from the reunification of Northern Schleswig with Denmark at the referendum in 1920. And I show that because I wanted to say how important it is to have a really good marker at the end of an exhibit. And I do that here by using a commemorative miniature sheet issued on the 10th of July 2020, 100 years after the referendum. And I use that because it's a good ending to exhibit, but also because it is the last thing the judges will see of an exhibit. The examples here were borrowed from these exhibits, and I thank Jari and Heloise and Eva for letting me use examples from their exhibits. That's it.
Well, Birthe, thank you very much for a fabulous presentation. I actually got to learn something about Open Philately, which I've never had, and it's actually I'm quite intrigued, and I'm almost considering it's something I might want to delve into, look into. Thank you. With that, I would like to start off the questions. The first question is from Ravi Kumar. Ravi writes, what type of picture postcards are considered non-philatelic and Open Philately?
All picture postcards can be used as a non-philatelic item. It's only when you show the address side, it becomes philatelic.
Okay, great. Ariana Datta writes, is it true that labels that are tied to the cover get more appreciation from the jurors?
Yeah, probably. If a label is on an envelope and is tied with a Chancellor, then you know for sure that it is genuine. It's not always possible. I use both kinds depending on what I have been able to acquire.
Great. The next question is from Panyam. Panyam writes, can we use newspaper, magazine, and other Cinderella cuttings in exhibits?
Yes, they will be part of the non-philatelic material.
Right. The next question is from Rakesh Thapa. Rakesh writes, can a relevant photocopy from a book or large magazine in collection be used in the exhibit?
Yeah, I always said, don't cut anything out from books. If you can find an original thing, it would be good. I mean, I've heard about examples. It's a historical painting. Of course, it can't fit on the pages, but very often it's possible to find a postcard in the museum that is of that particular painting. And I would always suggest that it is, if you really can't find any original, you can have, and that is why it's phrased, use original material if at all possible.
Great. The next question is from Shakil Ahmed. It's actually a two-part question. I'll read out the first one. It says, whether each page has to be balanced in 50-50, that is 50% philatelic and 50% non-philatelic material, or is it that the balance has to be in the entire exhibit rather than per page?
It has to be across the whole exhibit. You will notice that I showed an example on the philatelic knowledge where there were 4 covers. They were all philatelic. But then in my exhibits, I have got other pages, like for instance, the very last one I showed, there's only one philatelic item. All the others are illustrative. So when you look at a whole frame or the whole exhibits, then you can kind of see, well, if there's a one page that's a whole one or a whole thing the other, it actually evens out over a frame or over the whole exhibits.
Right. The second part of Shakil's question mirrors the previous question, and he writes, suppose a non-philatelic material exists only on website. Can we use a printout of it?
I have an item that I have taken off a website because I've never been able to find an original. And then I am very careful to say where I got it from. And of course, that goes for, all items, which museum you got it from, and so on. And on that particular item, it says, if you use this, please credit so-and-so. So I got the full accreditation for that particular item, and that's how I cover myself on that. But it is quite rare that you can't find something, because that you can find anything on the internet, and we don't want to have a philatelic exhibit where all the illustrations are lifted off the internet.
Great. The next question is from Rajveer Tulsian. Rajveer writes, how does one develop a story under Open Philately?
Sorry, can you say that again?
How does one develop a story under Open Philately?
Well, develop a story in whichever philatelic class you exhibit. I mean, if you think of a thematic philately, the storyline there has been the basis for thematic philately forever. And in postal history, it's also very much been a storyline. I think it's easier to find a storyline if you got a historic subject. But as you saw here with both the history of tea and the coaching, they have developed a storyline about tea and how it is in a sense a chronological development, but how it comes about and how the trade changes and so on. And similarly with the coaching, how they actually get better transport because they've got the invention of better cars and carts and wheels, and it develops from being just post to also taking passengers. So I think it depends very much on which topic, which subject one chooses, and also, of course, what material is available. And it's up to the individual exhibitor. It's their imagination and their knowledge. Very often people develop an exhibit on maybe their jobs, their skills, or a particular hobby. And it's really, that's what makes Open Philately so wonderful, that you can choose anything you like. You just got to develop storyline.
Great. The next question is from Senthil Kumar. The question is, when we use postal stationery as philatelic item, should we only use unused postal stationery?
No, there's no guidelines on any what should be used or unused. Anything.
Great. The next question is from Sumitra Arya. Sumitra writes, very interesting. Oh no, that's just a comment, but she says beautifully presentation. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, the next question is from Aryana Datta Chaudhary. Are fiscal and revenue stamps philatelic or non-philatelic?
I think they are philatelic, and I use them as such in one of my other exhibits because it's an accepted FIP class. So I believe that it is right that it should be possible to use them as philatelic items.
Great. I'm just reading through the questions. Okay. Withold, I won't even try to pronounce the last name because I'm going to butcher it, but Withold writes, why are copies of items in this class allowed? No copies are allowed in any other philatelic class.
It is because sometimes, as I've just said, you can not find something that is really the right thing you want to illustrate. But actually, if you look at the guidelines for postal history class 2C, they allow non-philatelic items as well. That is a change in postal history.
Wonderful. Well, with that, that concludes all the questions posted. Birthe, thank you very much once again for this fabulous presentation. And I turn it over to Pratisad.
Thank you, madam, for your wonderful presentation. It was a very insightful presentation. It's a small token of appreciation from Philately Congress of India. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.